Hi everybody and welcome back. Welcome back to the Reconnection space. This is the space where we look at all things reconnection. Reconnection with ourselves, who we are, with our relationships, with the world around us and with our future. And you know I love to have an interview. I love to bring great people on the channel and I've got a wonderful interview to do today. So I met Sarah, who's there in the gorgeous pink. Hey Sarah. Can you hear me okay?
Hi.
Hiya.
Yeah.
So we met completely by chance over a coffee, which was lovely. I got talking to Sarah about the charity organisation that she works with, but then I found out that Sarah had herself this amazing story. And she was kind enough to send me this fabulous book. Now, that says Worms on Parachutes, and I'm going to let Sarah and Jane explain exactly what that is all about, but that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about Sarah-Jane Phillips. We're going to be talking about Sarah-Jane's reconnection moment, because she has an amazing story to tell. So Sarah-Jane, welcome to Reconnection Space.
Hi. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to talk to you.
Brilliant. So I know everyone there is thinking, Worms on Parachutes. What's that all about then? So give us, our viewers, a bit of background as to how you ended up with a book that had that title.
Okay, so I actually went through a breast cancer treatment years ago, and I kind of experienced really great care, and I went through quite a lengthy operation. I chose to have breast reconstruction, and I know that's not everybody's choice, but it was the road that I wanted to go down. And it wasn't my first reconstruction. It was actually a second mastectomy that I'd had to have. And during that operation, or when I came round from it, it was quite a lengthy operation. It was hours and hours. And coming out of it, really, with the anaesthetic and everything, I had all of these hallucinations. And the hallucinations that was very repetitive was the one that was all of these kind of worms just falling from the hospital ceiling and just kind of like being attached to parachutes and just falling from the ceiling and landing all over my body. And
Wow.
There was just so many of them. And it wasn't until I started writing my book that I kind of relived that moment. And I relived that moment, and I kind of just like was writing about these worms on parachutes. And as I read the piece back to my husband, I was like, kind of like, oh my God, it was like I got really shivery, and I kind of like couldn't, it was almost as if it was a eureka moment. I was writing a book and suddenly I had the title. And that's kind of where this kind of title comes from, or the book comes from. It was just a hallucination after coming round from quite a lengthy operation, and it was kind of like in your anaesthetized mind. It was quite an experience. So that's what it is, but there's also a meaning to it, and quite a hidden meaning to it, if you kind of go down that route as well. And it really kind of confirmed everything about the story the experience I've been through, and the reasons why I was writing the book. And really there kind of isn't another title that I could have ever called this book. So yeah.
So I think that's a fabulous story. We're going to get to that meaning in a moment, because I think that's lovely. But for you to be sitting there writing the book, and then to have this kind of recollection of those moments coming out of anaesthetic, because you'd been through quite a journey, hadn't you? You'd as you say, this was your second sort of round of full surgery, having had breast cancer and then chosen to have more surgery, and then you'd also been previously ill as well prior to that. So you'd been on quite a journey to get yourself up to that point.
I mean, it kind of like my cancer journey really started as a teenager when I had Hodgkin's disease, and then from that, I mean, obviously I went through chemotherapy and everything like that, and then I had a 20-year gap where I was absolutely fine. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. The treatment the treatment that I was offered was obviously the mastectomy. I chose to have an immediate reconstruction. I went through, again, 8 rounds of chemo. I couldn't have radiotherapy because I'd had that previously in my childhood as a treatment.
Okay.
So that wasn't an option for me, which was then why I then chose to have a second mastectomy, just to eliminate all of any risk of the cancer kind of coming to the other breast as well.
So let's focus on that, because here we look at kind of those reconnection moments, and we had a chat before we started recording, and you know, people who are watching would say, well, any one of those is a reconnection moment, you know, right back to the beginning of your cancer story as a teenager. But you have a specific moment that came to mind where you think kind of really sums up that point where you thought, I'm going to make a choice, and I'm going to be in control. Something's going to be different. So when was that for you?
For me, I think firstly, I think that we're all different, and we kind of like, I can't explain how I felt the day that I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
No.
That being said, I think in terms of you talking about a moment where you reconnect in life, for me, I think it came when I had gone through the first mastectomy. I'd gone through the treatments. I had been told kind of like, just before I was starting my chemotherapy, that the cancer potentially could have been caused from the cancer that the treatment that I'd received as a youngster.
Yeah.
I had my whole chest through radiotherapy, through radiation treatment, which is kind of going back 30 years ago. So it's all different now. And I think going after my chemo finished, I just thought, you know what, if I got cancer in one side of my breast, the other side of my chest had received exactly the same amount of radiation treatments. I was 36 at the time, and I just thought, you know what, I want to get rid of that risk. I want to be in control. I hadn't been in control before then, and it was my opportunity to kind of be in control. Yeah. So I made the decision to go and have a second mastectomy and go for the reconstruction. But it was kind of like during that time, I just kind of like then reevaluated my life and started exercising more, and really started to focus on getting myself kind of healthy and fit, and kind of like realizing everything that was really important in your life, like your family, your children. I've got 2 girls, you know, that was certainly something that I would always want to be here to see them grow up, and the prospect of that ever being not happening is something that really kind of terrified me and frightened me. And I was kind of like thinking I could do everything that I could to prevent that from happening. So I think that's the moment that I think I felt like I was in control.
It was like a turning point for you.
Yeah,
yeah. As you said, I didn't feel in control up to that point. It had been almost like this was all happening to me, and this was your moment to say, no, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was the one that I kind of like, I suppose I was the one putting myself on the operating table. I was kind of like taking away that risk. And ironically, when I did have that second mastectomy, it had most definitely was the best decision, because it turned out that the second breast also had signs of cancer as well, which kind of, so it was definitely, you know, the right moment and the turning point for me. And from then on in, obviously from that moment, I've done so much as well, and I kind of, it's made me grow as a person and do things differently, kind of like look at my life differently, what I want to do with my time, how you end up wanting to help others through your own experience, just to give something back in a kind of funny kind of way.
And you work for quite a large charity organisation. I'm not going to mention them unless you do, because I don't know if you are allowed to mention them. But was making that move into a charitable organisation, was that part of you thinking, I want to give something back and I want to help others?
I think what happened basically after my treatments finished, I think that's when I changed as a person. That's when I started doing a lot of fundraising as a volunteer for various charities. And even now, I'm, you know, obviously I work for a charity, but I'm also a volunteer for another charity which helps women going through breast reconstruction as well. So they're all kind of things that have happened. Being a volunteer and raising money and being with people is definitely, you know, you've helped people, you've helped the research side of things. And I think it is something that changes. I just felt like that it, you know, I'd gone through something and something within me changed, and I'm so much happier doing something and having a role that ultimately at the end of the day is going to help somebody else and benefit somebody else. And that's what I love about it.
So tell us about these worms on parachutes then. What is the meaning behind that? What was that like? Oh, I get it now.
Yeah, well, basically, I mean, there's loads of stories. Everybody, you know, people say, oh, you know, everybody can write a book. Everybody's got a book in them. And I got to the end of my treatments and I just thought, you know what, I'd gone through my treatment. I then did the marathon and so forth. I trained for the marathon and everything. And somebody said to me, oh, you know what, you should write a book. And I thought, yeah, like, you know, I'd never write a book. But I walked away and I thought, you know what, I'm going to write a book.
Yeah.
And I knew how to start, because at the end of the day, I'm a mum, I'm a wife, you know, I work. I'm not, you know, I'm just a normal person. And I kind of like thought, yeah, no, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write everything. And even if I never felt that I was writing to make me feel better or because it was going to be something that I felt I needed to do. I always wrote something. I decided to write because my intention was it was another opportunity to raise funds and give something back to the hospital that treated me. And that was my kind of complete and utter motivation. So anyway, I I kind of sat down and I started writing, and then I thought, you know what, I've really got to build my character in this. So I started to go back to my childhood and all little things that happened in my childhood and kind of things that made me the person that I was. And I kind of started writing, and once I got kind of, because you write and then you rewrite and then you rewrite again, and then you kind of like forget about it all and go back to it, and it all changes, and you know, it's quite a long process. And because the ultimate thing for me was the fact that I was treated on the NHS. I didn't know anything about breast cancer or breast reconstruction or anything like that. Everything was completely new to me. And I walked in as a young mum. I had 2 daughters. They were very young at the time. And I was absolutely petrified. I was so terrified of everything that lay ahead for me. And I just think they kind of took my hand and they guided me through. They kept me alive. They treated me. They rebuilt me. They kind of helped me remain positive. And I just kind of like walked away from the hospital when I'd finished all of my treatment. And I looked up and I know there's so many people that actually express this exact feeling, but actually not many people speak about it. Right. And it's not necessarily at the moment that you're diagnosed with something. It is kind of like when it's all finished and your treatment's all done, and you're kind of then left in the, you know, in this kind of feeling of kind of fear. You're on your own, and you know, you've left the security of the hospital.
And I've heard that. I've heard people say that's actually, you've got so much support around you whilst you're going through it, but what happens afterwards? Yeah,
absolutely. And everybody feels that, but people don't really share that openly, I don't think. And so you know, I was writing. I had an amazing everybody, to be honest, everybody that goes through it will always kind of have this really fond affection towards their medical team anyway, because they are incredible. But I just felt that I'd been treated so well. I had a really good team of people around me, and I wanted to give something back to them. So I was kind of writing anyway. I didn't want a pitiful title or a sorrowful title. And when I decided on Worms on Parachutes, and then weeks later I went back to see if I could find a meaning to it, because it came out of a hallucination. And then I just thought, you know, you can find out what your dreams mean, and that that was the road that I was going down. And I'd been through breast reconstruction, and kind of like if you dream about worms, it's like this, and this sounds really crazy, and I'm not crazy, but it's quite interesting. If you kind of dream about worms, it's a symbol that you need to restore a part of your body, and it's a symbol of renewal and growth. So that was quite kind of eye-opening. And then the parachutes part of it is basically, if you dream about parachutes, parachutes act as this protective force over you.
Right.
So if for example, the parachutes fail to open, you'd feel completely let down by somebody that you'd put all of your trust in.
Right.
And I think as you read the story, what's really, really evident is the fact that I absolutely 110% trusted every single person that was looking after me. And I think that is what's just incredible, absolutely incredible. And that's kind of the meaning behind Worms on Parachutes.
I think that's brilliant. I think having that analogy of going through that reconstruction and having faith that that reconstruction was going to be okay, you know, that the team looking after you were going to be okay, just makes it, you say it sounds crazy, and we do love crazy, but that makes perfect sense actually in terms of that interpretation. And I think that's a great title for your book.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's great. And I think what's lovely as well is kind of like, now it's just another way that it's helping other people as well, because they're getting something from it, they're getting strength from it, so it's going out and it's helping people. So yeah, it's brilliant.
So we have loved talking to you about your book, about your journey, about your reconnection moment, that brave moment where you kind of said, no, I'm going to take charge now, and I'm going to decide what's going to happen to my body and to me. And I know a lot of people will relate to that. So thank you so much for sharing that. So Sarah-Jane Phillips, Worms on Parachutes, it's available on Amazon, so you can order it there. My last question, as always, before guests get off the hook and we stop recording, is reconnection. What does that mean to you?
I think reconnection for me is just realizing how strong your body is, and how resilient you become, and how strength grows within you. And I think that's certainly something that happened to me. I never thought that I would become the person that I am. But it's just this kind of inner strength that people have within them.
I think that sounds great. So thank you once again, everyone. We hope you've enjoyed this latest episode of the Reconnection Space. Remember, if you like the videos, you watch them, but you need to click the little subscribe button so that we know that you're enjoying them, and you get notified and you never miss an episode. We hope you have a fabulous week, and we hope that you've enjoyed this episode once again, and we'll see you next time for more guests and interviews on the Reconnection Space. Bye everybody. Thank you, Sarah.